We have Grandmaster Daniil Dubov waiting for his opponent to arrive. He's playing none other than Magnus Carlsen at the Tata Steel Chess India 2024. Daniil has the black pieces and he starts the clock before Magnus arrives, and Magnus arrives 3 seconds late to the game. Of course, he'll adjust all his pieces before he makes his first move. He gets them in order and off we go. E4. Daniil and Magnus have worked with each other before. Daniil has been his second, and you can see there Dubov is thinking like, what is it that will surprise Magnus? He goes e5, knight to f3, knight c6, and Magnus, what is his choice going to be? He goes for the Ruy Lopez here. a6, bishop a4, knight comes out, knight comes to c3. Now this is slightly weird because generally you castle it out and put your pawns on c3, d4 and so on. But Magnus is happy to put the knight on c3, go for slightly offbeat lines. Dubov, after all, is well known for his opening play, especially creative opening play. Now pawn comes up to d3, d6, and now the threat is to try and win this bishop with knight a5. So Magnus might play the move a3, a4. He plays a4 with the idea of taking, and the rook is hanging here on a8. So rook b8 makes all the sense. Magnus takes, pawn takes, and now plays his pawn to h3. Maybe later on the bishop cannot come here. Pawn comes up to h6. Both players playing it slow and steady here. Rook comes to e8. No hurry actually that they have. But how should you continue as white? Do you put your bishop here? Do you bring your knight into the center of the board? Do you go? What are the possibilities? Magnus is thinking about all the possible ideas that can happen here. He goes knight to e2. He moves his knight here, bishop f8, and the knight goes to g3. So he's got his knight on the king side. Daniil offers the bishop for trade. c3 played by Magnus so that he can recapture back with the queen, putting it on an active diagonal. Takes, bishop takes bishop. Queen takes on b3. And now Daniil strikes in the center with d5. An excellent move because if you take, he can take with the queen, and after the queen trade, this is absolutely fine for black. So Magnus now deciding what to do here. He brings his bishop out to e3. Interesting move. The bishop stands here a little bit weirdly, I must say, because d4 can come with a tempo, but Magnus just wanted to connect his rooks and brings his rook to a6, putting pressure on the c6 knight. The other idea is to shift the rook now to a1. But rook e6, a nice little move, and the rook doubles up on the a file. The game is boiling up. It's very well balanced right now, with Dubov having 2 minutes 16 seconds, Magnus having 1 minute 56 seconds, while Dubov's time also is running down. They both are looking equal on the clock and on the board. b4 played. A very interesting pawn move, because if you take here, then the rook can get activated. So Magnus may not want to take this. Rook e8 is an option to trade rooks. Queen a4 to put more pressure here. He goes c4. A very, very provocative move once again, because d4 can come in and Dubov pushes it. The bishop has to go back, and now one amazing move is queen c8, because then you have knight d7, knight c5. Dubov goes with the same idea here with queen e8. Getting the knight here would be huge for black. Because if queen c8, queen a4 trying to attack here, then there is queen b7. But because here, now Magnus attacks this, knight cannot go back. So Magnus stopped knight d7. White is now slightly better here, because this plan was just so strong. It's not coming in. Knight comes back to e2. Magnus is going with his knight here to c1 to b3. He's actually positionally putting Dubov under big pressure. Maybe one idea is to trade this active rook on a8, because it's just so well placed on a6, to play rook b6. And Dubov investing his time here, and rightly so, because he is under pressure by Magnus Carlsen, one of the best positional players in the world, and Dubov has to figure out what he would like to do next. Moves like king g7, king h7 do suggest themselves, but it will do very little to improve the position drastically. Thinking hard here. Oof, going down to a minute. His last move. He's taken 53 seconds to make this move. Wow. Knight h7 played by Dubov. Not the best move. He's angling for maybe creating some knight g5 ideas. I'm not sure what he wants to do. But White's plan is simple. Knight c1, knight b3. Why is Magnus thinking here? He has it all figured perhaps. Yes, he goes for it. Knight c1 played. f5. Oh my goodness. Dubov wanted to create play on the king's side and in the center. It was not about moving the knight here. It was about f5. Magnus takes the pawn. Pawn takes, but now the king is weak. Knight b3. White's position is beautiful. Black can even not push the pawn because simply the pawn on d4 is hanging. So nothing's working out for black really. But maybe Dubov wants to put the bishop here, defending this and then push e4. The problem, however, is that the knight would jump into c5 square the moment that bishop leaves. So many problems here. And Dubov down to 30 seconds on the clock. Magnus definitely feeling that the things are going well for him. He goes rook d8. Here Dubov. Rook e1, a mistake, a huge mistake. Knight a5 was the best move here, but rook e1, he's just let him go e4. Magnus has made a huge mistake. He plays bishop f4, another blunder. Because now the problem is you can take here and it's a very, very important moment. Look at this. Take. Magnus's idea is to take the rook. Queen takes and then he wants to take on c6. But believe it or not, black has an amazing resource there. Take. Dubov is trying to find it. And the move is rook d6. Insane move. He takes it. He takes the knight. Takes. Queen takes c6. And can Dubov find this? No. He goes queen e1. This was a big miss here. King h2. He takes on f2. But what a miss. And the beautiful line there was rook d6. And here after bishop d6 to check. And then go bishop d6 with a win. But that was not to be. And now after queen takes queen. Pawn takes. Magnus is winning. Unfortunate for Dubov. Takes here, he takes on b2. White is completely in the driver's seat. You can see Magnus has now 2 extra pawns and he's going to win another pawn. 3 pawns up. Wow. The tide has shifted tremendously. Rook e2 check. King comes up to g3 and pawn pushes forward to b3. Rook b6. Bishop comes here. Now all hopes on this b3 pawn. At this point, bishop d6 check. He moves his king away. And you can see the knight is hanging. So you can't take this pawn because h6 hangs. But what to do next? Magnus now using his time. He has 25 seconds to play with. Dubov down to 7 seconds. He pushes his pawn 1 square away from queening. But it's not queening. The rook has it controlled. The c pawn is moving. He pushes c6, knight d5, attacking the rook. A check comes in, king moves up, pawn pushes forward. Rook tries to stop the pawn. Whew. Now Magnus cannot make a simple move. Dubov resisting crazily. He wants to take this pawn. Goes knight d4. A good move. Attacking the rook. The rook comes up, still attacking the pawn. Now attacking also the d3 pawn. And he goes rook b7, threatening to queen with a check. So the king goes back. Not easy to find a win here for Magnus. Bishop e5, fantastic move there. King d7, he moves his knight, attacking the rook. The rook goes to c2. And now Magnus with 8, 7, 6, 5 queens. Whoa, if queens, king takes, gives a check, king d8 and pushes his h pawn. So he's given up the c pawn, but he's got his h pawn rolling here. f4. And now rook e1 is a great move, but he plays rook d2 with just 1 second on the clock. He takes here king f5, and now bishop f4 was winning, was a draw. But instead he takes this and he blunders because now he's going to lose material. Bishop e5 check, and you can see that Magnus is going to win a very important pawn. Bishop takes b2, bishop takes, rook takes. You are reaching this position with 2 extra pawns, and you can see Dubov knows that he has lost this. King g6, check, king comes here. And now if you attack the pawn push, if you take here, there's king g6, so rook goes back. Check, king h7, king to e7 played. Check here, king f7. And now he pushes the pawn to f6. In comes a check, king f8. And pawn push forward, king goes back. And he resigns. Magnus Carlsen wins. What a game this was. Incredible fight by two friends here. But also Magnus showing some great ideas. Dubov showing some amazing fighting spirit. And then towards the end, that utter chaos where anything could have happened. But in the end, it was the GOAT who triumphed and is moving towards a confident tournament victory.